First day in battle was about 2 days later. Went out to a place called LZ Barbara, right outside of a mountain called Nui Ba Din. It was an old French fort that the French had prior to the United States moving in after the French left. And it was a battle having to do with the establishing further perimeters around the LZ. And LZ is a landing zone. And it was intense. There was a lot of fire, a lot of firefights. And my job as a combat medic is not necessarily returning fire, but it was to evacuate the wounded, treat the injuries immediately, and evacuate the wounded. So in those circumstances, I had to rely on my team partners to keep me well and to keep the enemy fire off of me while I did my job, because usually when you go out into a combat zone to retrieve a person who has been hit in combat, they usually fall down right where they've been hit. And unless some of your troops have taken out the person that shot at him, that person who shot the person that you're trying to get is still shooting. And if he is, and you're now moving into the area where this person has been hit, you can expect some fire. So the idea is your team to return fire, to lay down suppressing fire, so that you can get in, stop the bleeding, bandage your person, and move him out. In this particular case, it was particularly difficult because it was dark. And in Vietnam, you cannot see past your hand in front of your face in the dark. So in order for me to find out where this person was wounded, I actually had to feel around for the holes in his body to stop the bleeding. Well, I was very nervous. I was more nervous because I was very focused in on, I did not want to lose this person. This was my first attempt at being a professional combat medic in the field, and I was very worried more about doing something wrong that would cause his death than I was about my own safety, quite frankly. I was more focused in on evacuating this one correctly.
It's the men that you're with that you're trying to protect.
When you're in combat, you're fighting not so much as an individual, but you're part of a team, and you have to fight for and with each other.
Survivability of the team depends on everybody doing their job.
And if you're well trained, believe it or not, you're not afraid. I was afraid initially. You're not thinking about yourself. You're not even thinking about being wounded or killed. The worst thing can happen to you is not being wounded or killed. Believe it or not, it's hard to believe for a civilian. But the worst thing that can happen is I'm not doing my part for the part of the team.
You'd be surprised what you can do if you're put in a situation where you are required to save your life and save those of the lives of the people around you, especially if that's your job.
What a trauma to a young man, 18 and 19 years old, coming from a big city, and a year later he's in a jungle with heat and bugs and drenching rains, and they say go out there and find somebody and either kill him or capture him. Nothing can be more traumatic than that.
You're as a kid, 18, 19 years old, people are calling you doc. You tend to think of yourself as a doctor. You believe it or not, when you're in combat and you're the medic and people are calling you doc, you actually think you're the doctor, and you think that you can perform these miracles out there. And when you can't, it's disappointing, it's devastating, because you absorb this as though it's your fault this person died. Somehow you didn't get it right, And it wasn't for years I walked around with this guilt until finally, a chaplain who was in Vietnam with us finally came up to me, and it was like throwing some cold water. He told me, John, you were not a doctor. You were 19 years old and you had gone to 10 weeks of medic training. That didn't make you a doctor.
I think war is man's worst endeavor. Here are two groups trying to kill each other. Think how horrible that is for a young man off a farm in Indiana going into combat, and he has to kill the other guy to be successful. That's a horrible thought. Wars are always fought by individuals whose personal values outweigh their aversion to war.
You would think that I would be focused in more on those people that I saved, and I obviously saved more people than I lost. But you know what? While I feel good about it, I spend more time thinking about the people that I wasn't able to save, quite frankly. And I tell you something, I can remember the faces of everybody who died.
There are no useful byproducts of war. It takes the lives of the people engaged in it, and it leaves orphans and widows. Hell of a thing.
Even though all the bullets are flying and noise and everything is going on, as far as this person is laying here is concerned, you're the only person there. And they're talking to you because they want to talk to the person that's on their mind at that time, and you got to be that person. And so I've been people's mother, I've been people's father, their brother, their girlfriend, I've even been people's dog.
And it's just the same thing that happened to us in different wars at different times. They'll say everything is peaceful on the front, but when you're patrolling or you're out on patrol or you're out checking to see what's going on or you're trying to find the enemy, then somebody's always getting killed or somebody always wants to kill you. And I don't see anything much different right now in Iraq than that has happened before.
I'm constantly amazed that whatever generation, you call this Generation X, my generation was just subsequent to the great generation of World War II, but young people don't change. They look for challenges. Our young people have as much integrity. I know they have more skills. I think they're better fighters than we were because they're much better trained.
Although combat is a very intense experience, and it's traumatic in very much all sense of the word, but the toughest thing about Vietnam for me was coming home. Coming home was the toughest battle I had to do with the protests and all the baby killing stuff that was being said. And that's why, and the reason I'm bringing that up, because I don't want to go replow that ground. Everybody's heard the Vietnam veteran story about what happened to them when they come home. The reason I'm bringing it up is because that's what's so important for us as a nation today, to welcome home these troops from Iraq. And it is important to do it, because when you put your life on the line for the country, for your country, it's important that when you come home, that you be welcome home and know that the people that you're out there defending appreciate the sacrifice that you make.
I think we have a wonderful fighting force, and it's not out to dominate the world. It's out there to make life better for a lot of people, and I wouldn't have traded that for anything.
No hero, just a survivor.
I think that war is probably the worst way to settle a dispute. I think if you interview most combat guys, they will tell you that war is probably the worst way to settle a dispute. Having said that, though, there are things worth fighting for. There are things that are worth dying for, and freedom is one of them. You know, we in America, you know, we're spoiled. You know, we have a unique brand of freedom here where we have the right to do things that people don't have the right to do anyplace else.
They say, if you had to do it all over again, would you do it? I would. It changed my entire life. It changed my perspective on not only the United States, but the world.
Am I a better person? I don't know. I don't think. I think I'm just me, and sometimes I'm bad and sometimes I'm good.
Even though the war was protracted very quickly, very efficiently, it was probably the best military effort that our nation has ever done. It's still important to welcome home these troops, because they will live with this experience forever, and they will remember how they were treated when they come home, because they're going to be veterans a lot longer than they were in combat.